Oh, wow. And, Chisa, Sensei Kwabin, back again. Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. Pow! Sensei Kwabin here. Moment with the master, number 39. Back, family. Took a moment, took just a moment, a week when he got some rest, rejuvenation, right? Remolding the mind, renewing, right? And now we're here to re-engage. We left you a couple of weeks ago with Moment with the Master number 38, knowing your role, playing your position, part 1. And here we're back again today. Exciting, yes. Let's do it. I told you we'd be back. It's training time. Kids are back to school, right? That temperature change is turning over so that we're getting colder temps in the morning, milder temps during the day. It's a new time. Time for a new season. Let's come and talk to this issue today. Knowing your role, playing your position, part 2. Here's the poll question. What's your assignment? What's your assignment? And are you in line to reach your finish line? Knowing your role and playing your position. What's your assignment? And are you in line to reach your finish line? You know, when we were in school, parents, teachers, everybody, they would tell us, finish your assignments. They would grade us on whether or not we finished our assignments. Bring home a report card. If there were issues in this area, we had to oftentimes do makeup assignments. I know y'all with me. Y'all remember the makeup assignments? But now, adulthood, we're in the dojo. We're in training. We're in molding and modeling for life. And so what we get now are what we call real world grades. I know we're talking about it. Real world grades. When we go out, we assess job market, whether employable or not. Real world grades. We'll not be able to find housing, right? Be able to provide for ourselves. Real world grades. Whether or not we're able to make advancements and make progress. Real world grades. Whether or not we're able to sustain relationships and keep ourselves in line and in order. Real world grades. Whether or not we're able to manage a bank account, manage finances. Real world grades, right? And some of us are having challenges in many of these areas, but we're here to talk about knowing our role and playing our position. Boom! Right? One thing I've noticed about this grading system, when we look at how we're doing, how we're measuring up, how we're planting our feet on the ground, one thing that I have noticed is that a surefire way to get an F in these real world grades is by the measure of what I'll call, or what we know as, complacency. Complacency will get us a real world grade of F, right? And I'll say this also, one of the leading causes for us of complacency, or not putting ourselves in position so that we have good outcomes, progressive outcomes, growing mindset, right? Even up into a greatness mindset, is this element of distractions. Cyberspace, social media. You're watching me now, right? And hopefully this is an improving information, beneficial information, right? But we know that this can be also a distraction. So distractions that lead to complacency, that leads to us saying, hey, I'm not really going to put my energy, time, and attention in what I know I need to put into the engine of my progress. Real world grades. So complacency, we know, can lead to an F. As a matter of fact, I have a saying. My saying is that complacency is the mother of mediocrity. And y'all know, Sensei Kwabin talks about greatness. You know, you say, Sensei, you're always on this greatness kick, but I'm looking toward the best possible outcomes that I can muster, right? Now, I might assess it as great. It might not be assessed as great on your end, but I'm looking at the greatest possible outcomes that I can muster. No excuses, right? Do I lean on hope? No. Hope is not my platform. The power of the mind is the platform. The power of the mind to believe. The power of the mind to create. The power of the mind to materialize real world gains. Before we left on break, we talked about positioning. And we talked about having a clear mindset of what role we play. We talked about positioning and how where we stand or where we position ourselves oftentimes is a determination of what role we have identified. What role we have identified. That's why it's know your role and play your position, right? So the positioning and having clear roles are the two crucial things that help us make these grades, make these real world grades, and assess problems, get over hurdles, and push through boundaries, right? But I've noticed something else with knowing our roles and playing our position. Yes, a couple of weeks ago, we talked about the challenges that we have in being centered or having the need to consistently or constantly be centered as the main character, sometimes in our own story, or the main character in any story, or the predominant center of attention, or the one who garners all the focus, or the one who draws all the air, or the one who moves, parts the crowd, and everybody just makes a way. Sometimes that's an issue. Because what is at issue there is not so much that there is someone who's doing that, not so much that there is someone who has that measure of attraction, not so much that there was someone who has that level of effect, but it is the issue because that person oftentimes develops a mindset that shows itself in what we call main character syndrome, that does not lend itself to supporting roles. And I'll say that the balance of our humanity, the balance of our person comes in our ability to be able to occupy different spaces at different times, depending upon what the call of the moment is. So I talk about supporting roles. I talk about standing aside for someone else's benefit. I talk about being able to position ourselves so that we give somebody else a boost and a bump. I talk about whether or not we are measured enough in how we self-assess so that we can stand and let the other fellow star. That we can stand and let the other fellow be promoted. That we can stand and let the other person be elevated. Grandmaster Sam McGee would always say, he said, you can't elevate yourself, Sensei Bobby. He said, you have to elevate someone, and as you elevate someone else, you by virtue of your connection with their elevation, you receive elevation. Or someone else has to elevate you, but you cannot elevate yourself. Wisdom for the ages. Wisdom for the ages. So can we stand aside and let someone else's efforts take center stage? Or are we caught in this thing that is not static, that does not have strength in its position, but is fluid? This day and age, everything is so fluid. Everything is so just give and take, just go with it. But nothing is standard, nothing is static, nothing is rooted. Fluidity, it can be the enemy of stability. And one thing I notice about fluidity is fluidity does not want to be held to account. Fluidity wants to be left alone. Fluidity wants just to go along to get along. Fluidity wants just to be able to shift and move and change shape and change form and shift in and out as it sees fit. That's fluidity. But I say the maturity and the humility that it takes to eliminate main character syndrome, right, provides us with a grounding that keeps us in place for stability. That keeps us in place for being able to stand in a supportive role. So I say march on in on a supportive role. If you see somebody doing something, march in a supportive role. You see somebody doing something, set yourself quietly aside and say, you know what? I got that person, but give them something of substance to push them along. That's why I say it takes maturity and humility to decenter ourselves, to combat the ego, to know our role and play our position. That's why I'm not interested when I see someone doing great. I'm not interested in blocking their emergent greatness. Shout out to Sensei Jerry Fontanez in the UMAN tournament coming up on September 20th. I think he's 35 plus. He said he has numbers and hordes of people who are already signed up, participating, competing, coming out of retirement competing, training to compete. Kata, komite, weapons, creative, traditional, all that, men, women. Shout out to Sensei Jerry. All right, I've been off of social media for a couple of weeks, but what I saw was a movement coalescing around the energy and the effort he's putting toward that event. And I'll talk more about that a little bit later. So my strategy is for eliminating this main character syndrome. My strategy is to fix it. When we deal with people, sometimes this is a strategy. I'm going to get to the main character syndrome strategy. But when we're dealing with people, sometimes a better strategy for dealing with people is to either fix it, to forgive it, or to forego it. This is a strategy for dealing with people. Fix it, forgive it, or forgo it. Knowing our role and playing our position. This is how we deal with the interrelatedness of people. This is how we deal with setting aside ourselves for people. This is how we deal with not getting in the way of someone else's emergent greatness. So we want to be a support and not a detriment. We want to be a support and not a detriment to someone else's greatness. So here's what I say I'm going to give you 5 things to help get over main character syndrome. I call these 5 of the 8 role balancing behaviors. We gave you 3 last time. I'm going to give you the remaining 5. Right? Clarity, right? Clarity, seeing outside of ourselves, right? And having gratitude. Those were the first 3. Clarity, seeing outside of ourselves, and having gratitude. These 5 are understand or seek to understand the intent of others. Seek to understand the intent of others. But what we ought to do is we ought to be moved and respond to how they act. This is a balancing behavior. Seek to understand the intent of others, but respond to how they act. And understand when there's incongruency between the two, that we have to either fix it, forgive it, or forgo it. Now, certainly we can't fix other people, but what I'm saying, as far as how we position ourselves to relate to them, help them to see a better way. That's what I mean, fix it. Right? Fix it, forgive it, or forgo it. The second of the 5 is exercise our change agency. Be a driving force for change. Be a driving force to make a difference in either a situation, people, circumstance, group dynamics, or even our own personal realities. Be a driving force for change. Right? Number 3, the third of the 5. We always seek, well, like we said, best available outcomes. Call them the drive for positive results. Pushing for positive results. Aiming for positive results. Best available outcomes. That's what I'm looking for. It's my greatness. Best available outcomes. I'm pushing for it. I'm looking towards it. Number 4 of the 5. You know, sometimes when we have setbacks, difficulties, stumbling blocks, pitfalls, we need to laugh at the setbacks. We need to be able to, yo, oh man, wow, that was a setback. Laugh at it. Wow. Whoo! Take it light. Make it lighter. Loosen the load of the setback. Loosen the load of the stumbling block. Loosen the load of the pitfall. Laugh at it. Ha ha ha. Ha. Word. Wow. Have a sense of humor about life. Right? We have a sense of humor about life. And then number 5, the 5th of the balancing roles, the role balancing behaviors that we're talking about today, is sometimes after we have understood the intent of others, and responded to their actions, after we have exercised change agency and used it as a driving force, after we have sought the best available outcomes, after we have laughed at the setbacks, sometimes we have to cut off life support. Cut off life support to that idea, cut off life support to that enterprise, cut off life support to what we're doing, cut off life support to maybe a relationship, cut off life support to something that does not really benefit after we have done what we can to put a foundation underneath it so that it can be stabilized. Remember, we said fluidity can be the enemy of stability. And sometimes we can't be fluid in the face of challenges and obstacles and difficulties. We can't be fluid. Sometimes we got to cut off life support in order to put post in the ground of stability on exactly where we are and exactly how we're going to stand. Those are the 5 role balancing behaviors. Understand the intent. Have change agency. Pursue positive results. Laugh at setbacks, and sometimes, when it's necessary, cut off life support. We want to avoid the things that might take us down a mountain, that make us slide down the mountain. We don't want to have that mudslide effect, where we're taking on so much that we are not really effective in anything that we're doing. We want to avoid having that mudslide effect, that we take on too much, we can be ineffective with everything. The mudslide effect. We can't be everything to everybody, so that's a caution. That's the caution. We don't want to become a tool of someone else's advancement either. So there's a balance to it all. Yes, we show up to be a supportive role. We show up to be a supportive talent. But we don't want to be a tool of someone else's advancement so that there's exploitation happening there. Someone putting a battery in our back so that we are really carrying out all the elements of their own program consistently and without appreciation. Right? So we want to stand up in knowing our role and playing our position, but we want to be balanced in our perspective, balanced in our mindset, position ourselves with clear roles, clear thoughts, avoiding complacency, using strategies to fix it, forgive it, or forgo it, and just use those 5 role balancing behaviors and support someone in their emerging greatness. This is Sensei Kwabin. I stand with you in your emerging greatness. And I hope you pursue it with vigor and passion and all of your resolve. This is Sensei Kwabin, Moment with the Master, number 39. Know your role, play your position, part 2. You know how we do. We up in here on Wednesdays, sometime here about this time. We'll be back here next week. Right now, I'm going to say, ha, from Sensei Kwabin to you, ha. Us, I'm out of here. Chisa!